Hey guys, and welcome to Should You Buy It, where all we do is talk a little bit about the game and tell you whether or not we think it's worth the cost.
That scared the shit out of me.
And no swearing in the first minute. I'm already on 2 strikes.
Oh my god.
In this episode, we'll be playing Dead Island 2, the semi-open world game where you will melt, burn, and even electrocute zombies in order to create some of the coolest gore on the market today. Now, the first question that we always cover in these videos is what stage of development is the game in? And in this case, in Dead Island 2, it is currently in full release and available on PC as well as most consoles for about $60. It's worth mentioning that there are 2 more expensive versions of the game, but we'll be just looking at the base game for the purposes of this video. Now, if you guys want to save money on games, you should check out Humble Bundle in the description below. Humble Bundle will not only help to give you a discount on games sometimes, but will also help charity and support this channel. Everything you purchase on Humble Bundle will go towards helping a charity, helping our channel, and giving you some kind of a discount if there's a discount running on that game, which they have tons of discounts that Steam does not all the time. And again, if you want to save money, just check out Humble Bundle down below by clicking the link. So what exactly is Dead Island 2? Well, Dead Island 2 is the long awaited sequel to the Dead Island 1 game, which was one of the first looter shooter style games to actually ever hit the market. It focuses on killing zombies in a unique way while also having a short storyline for you to play through. With that being said, let's start off by talking about the biggest selling point for this game, and that is its new Gore system. Dead Island 2 devs have been talking about this new system constantly in pretty much every press interview they've had, and rightfully so, as it allows the player to see what kind of gore would actually happen if you were to strike a zombie in the face. For an example, if you use an electrocuted weapon on a zombie's face, it will leave a burn mark exactly where you struck them. Or if you were to say use a bleeding weapon on a zombie, then you will see blood squirt out from that exact spot that you made contact. There are even cool counterattacks where you can do things like shove your hand through the skull of a zombie and you get to actually see the entire gore process happen, and things like a loose eyeball hanging out or actually seeing the skull bits go flying out the back end. This whole gore system is something that really isn't present in any other games at this point in time and is clearly the main selling point, but it's just graphics and won't change the way the game actually plays itself. Now, combat, story, and progression, on the other hand, are where you'll constantly be interacting with the game and where your inputs will have much more of an impact on your experience. Dead Island 2's combat has you mostly focusing on melee weapons, but with some added variety of skills and weapon variants available for the player to use. For an example, you could modify your metal claws to cause them to have an electrocution effect on them, or you could make a bow staff apply some sort of an acidic effect, or even make a gun light its bullets on fire. Some zombies, however, such as a firefighter zombie, actually are immune to specific types of damage. In this case, that would be fire damage for a firefighter zombie. Therefore, they cannot be damaged by it, and you must use some other type of weapon which helps to keep things fresh and changing throughout combat. Now, as far as the story side of things go, you can expect it to take you about 8 to 12 hours to complete the main storyline, depending on how efficiently you play it. Personally, it took me about 9 hours with a couple of side quests too to actually get through the whole thing. I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but I will say that the storyline is pretty cut and dry from the get-go. As you start to complete more quests, whether that be a main quest or that be a side quest, and you find hidden caches, you'll also start to unlock new modifications, new weapons, ability cards, level up, and more in order to improve your Slayer's potential. As for how the actual ability cards work, you can essentially just think of them as perks, but they have slots that you have to slide them into. You won't be selecting cards from a deck and then randomly getting that effect like some kind of card building game, but instead will actually just kind of use them like they're a perk slot. For an example, one card might let you do something like a roar to increase your toughness temporarily, while others let you simply regain some extra HP after blocking a zombie's attack. And just to top all of that off, there are several playable Slayers currently available for you to choose from, each of which come with their own set of voice lines, so they have their own kind of feeling to how they talk and interact with the world, as well as a few different passives that they uniquely have and no one else does. Now let's go ahead and move over to the pros and cons section of the video, where I'm going to talk a little bit more about my personal opinions on playing this game and what I thought about it. First up for the pros is that the game just has a beautiful, beautiful gore system, and it's just amazing to look at. As far as the environment goes, it's not bad, but it does feel like it's a little bit dated. It wasn't so bad that I felt like it was breaking my immersion, but I will say that the actual gore itself felt so good to look at. This was definitely a good selling point, and it is definitely the main draw for people and the main thing I enjoyed while playing the game that stood out to me. Next is the environmental part of the combat specifically, not the combat overall, but the environmental aspect of it. What I'm talking about here is, say, lighting some oil on fire, or going and trying to make water streams in front of you and then throwing a car battery on it to electrocute it and things like that. Personally, I really enjoyed this as it kind of livened things up and broke that whole button smashing, quickly kill them by just, swinging your weapon over and over again thing, and made it something a little bit more unique once in a while. And the final pro I have is that there was really no major game-breaking bugs in this game. Any bugs I did encounter, which were very few and far between, were just visual bugs and things that were expected to happen in pretty much any game. Nothing that you'd be like, oh my gosh, this completely broke my immersion, but I will say I have heard reports of other people getting pretty big visually immersive breaking bugs happening, where when you're playing in co-op, you have another player just turn invisible for some reason. Again, nothing game-breaking, just some visual bugs that have been seen throughout the course of gameplay. Now for the cons, and first up for the cons is that the combat overall, again, this is not including the environmental aspect of it, felt pretty awful and outdated. It felt like I was playing Dying Light 1, or honestly like I was playing Dead Island 1. It felt like it just hasn't been innovated on, and it was just taking things from other games and then trying to implement them here. For an example, if you actually take a shot of the Dying Light 2 drop kick, where you kind of jump in the air and kick your two legs out to push a zombie over, that almost exact identical animation is in Dead Island 2. I mean, if you showed this to somebody who wasn't a gamer and knew exactly what these two games were, they might even get the animations confused and think they were identical. Personally, the combat felt lazy, and it feels like they didn't really add much to it, at least nothing that was like innovative or, new in a good way, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. Next is that the quests are honestly just pretty dumb and simple. I know some people think they're somewhat interesting, and really no one is picking this game up for the storyline, but the storyline was just so generic zombie trope and boring. It was never surprising. It was never like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. It was, stereotypical stuff. Plane crashes right at the beginning. You get out of the plane crash. Oh no, there's zombies. Gotta save the innocent people that don't know how to fight for themselves. Okay, now here's a quest. I need you to go find the dum-dum that ran away from the group for some reason. Okay, you got the dum-dum. Now could you go fetch me my keys so we can lock the door? Okay, now that you did that, all of us are scared and don't know how to fight. So could maybe you kill everything for us? It basically just felt like these people were wimps and you were doing all the errands for them because they were too lazy or too scared to do it themselves, which just didn't feel fun and immersive at all. Following that is that some of the animations overall just didn't look good. I mean, the running animation in general doesn't look that great. It doesn't really look like it's something innovative. As far as the attack animations, they don't really look that innovative either. These are all pretty generic things, and for a $60 purchase, I'm expecting something a little bit more here. I want to see something that's maybe a slight step above a indie dev studio's animations. Here we just didn't get that. It's just not there, and it feels lazy. It feels like they bought an asset off of a store that says, hey, this is how I do an animation, and I'm just going to plug this animation in and put my skins on it, instead of trying to customize the animation to really look good for their game. Following that one is that the game has a slow-mo system, which isn't inherently bad. The bad thing is that it triggers almost completely randomly whenever you kill a zombie, and it can be really weird and make no sense. For an example, if say you electrocute some water and then run away from that area and start running towards something else, some zombie might randomly die to that water over the course of the next 60 seconds. If that zombie dies and then you get a slow-mo scene, it's like, why do I care about this slow-mo? And sometimes you don't even know what's triggered it. Yes, there are some moments where the slow-mo felt okay, but overall I think it was a net negative rather than a net positive for the player experience. And finally, for the cons, is that the game has a superhuman rage mode thing that you can go into, which I'm not going to spoil about how you unlock that. All I'll say is that you don't unlock it till you're almost, if not over, halfway through the actual storyline. And to me, that is unacceptable. I should not have to play halfway through the storyline to experience what is supposed to be a really cool feature that you guys have been bragging about on your actual trailers. Then, just to top it off, once you do unlock it, it feels like you're just smacking things and spamming left click or whatever your attack button is depending on what platform you're playing on, over and over and over again with no real rhyme or reason. Sure, there's some abilities you could use in there, but the thing only lasts like 5 seconds and you're better off just trying to kill 3 or 4 zombies before it resets and you have to go into normal fighting mode again. I feel like this could have been a huge win for them if they took a little bit more time and made it a little bit more interesting, but instead we just kind of get this very generic rage mode that allows you to have only one special ability while using, and that special ability is usually not as good as just spamming the attack button. Now, before we move on, I do want to make it clear that I do think there is actually more cons for this game and that the core game in it of itself is not horrible. It's just for a $60 title, it's kind of unacceptable. So with that being said, let's move over to our rating for the game. And when we rate games, we want to get 1 hour of enjoyment out of every $1 that game costs. So for this game in particular, in Dead Island 2, we would want to get roughly 60 hours of enjoyment out of the $60 cost of the game. And after completing all of Dead Island's story, as well as most of the side quests, we give it 4 out of 10 potatoes. Dead Island 2 had some absolutely insane graphics when it came to their gore system. But outside of that, it feels like the game just hasn't really improved much since its original release in 2011. Sure, it's got a couple new mechanics and maybe some ever so slightly better environments and graphics, but it's not enough to excuse a boring storyline, a short playthrough time, and a lackluster combat. I mean, once you get over the fact that the gore and graphics look cool and that you're using some cool unique weapons to do the combat, you start to realize that the combat's pretty darn repetitive in and of itself. And no matter how cool you make something look, when the core systems aren't good, that you're interacting with non-stop, then that's going to create a negative experience for the player. When you compare it to games like Dying Light 2, for an example, which is also a zombie apocalypse game, which was made by the original Dead Island creators, it is worse in just about every single way, outside of it having a bit more polish and a cooler visual combat system. And that is why we feel that for $60, Dead Island 2 is probably not worth the cost. Before you guys go, I do want to give you a quick thank you for watching the video. Like it if you liked it, dislike if you didn't, and share if you've got some friends that might be interested. Either way, I want to give a big shout out to our Platinum Above channel members, which currently include Caustic FPV, Jonathan S, Gerald89, AZ Blackbird, and Jim Phillips. Thank you all so much for watching once again. I'm Game Advisor, and I'll see you in the next one.